The sky above the alien planet turned red as the small human ship fell like a broken star. Smoke followed behind it, thick and dark, leaving a trail across the atmosphere. Inside the ship, James Miller, a human doctor, held onto the controls, trying to steer the ship to safety, but it was too late. One of the engines had exploded after being hit by space debris. Now he had no choice but to crash, brace for impact. He whispered to himself. With a loud roar and burning heat, the ship smashed into the rocky ground of the Deadlands, an empty, dry, and forgotten part of the alien world called Kyrelos. Everything went black. Hours later, James opened his eyes. Pain filled his body, but he was alive. Sparks flickered around him, and smoke burned his lungs. He slowly pushed open the ship's broken door and crawled out. The sky was orange now. The land stretched far and wide with cracked earth. No trees, no water, and no life. His uniform was torn. His arm was bleeding, and his gear was almost useless. Still, James stood. He had survived worse before, during the war. But this planet felt different, heavy, silent. Watching, he grabbed his small medkit, slung a half-burnt backpack on his shoulder, and began to walk, one step at a time, across the barren land. He didn't know it yet, but something or someone was watching him from the shadows. Not far from him, hidden behind large rocks, a tall alien woman crouched low. Her name was Varaya. Her skin shimmered with silver tones, and her long hair flowed like black rivers. But her eyes were full of fear and sorrow. In her arms, she held a small child barely breathing. The child's skin had turned pale. His chest rose only once every few seconds. Varaya had tried everything she could. Ancient herbs, sacred chants, energy water. Nothing worked. Her tribe had left her, calling the child cursed. She had been alone for days, but then she saw the fire in the sky, and the human fall from it. She knew of humans. Strange beings who could fix bodies, cure sickness, and even bring back the half-dead. At least that's what the old story said. Now, Varaya had one last chance. James found a rocky cave just before nightfall. He gathered dry weeds and lit a small fire. The warmth helped, and he cleaned his wounds. He tried to rest, but the planet's silence kept him on edge. Then, a whisper. Soft, broken, a voice like wind through leaves. "You're a healer, right?" James jumped and turned, grabbing a small metal rod from his bag. A shadow stood near the cave entrance, tall, glowing faintly. "Alien, I don't want to harm you," she said quickly, stepping forward with her hands up. Her voice shook. "Please, my child is dying." James hesitated, his heart pounded. This could be a trick, but then he saw the child in her arms, limp, eyes half open, barely breathing. "I saw you fall," the alien mother said. "I waited, I hoped, I prayed." She knelt down and held the child out toward him. "Fix him," she begged, "and I'll give you anything. Any pleasure, any comfort you want." James stared at her, shocked. He wasn't used to such offers, but more than that, he saw the pain in her eyes. The fear, the desperation. She wasn't lying. She wasn't trying to seduce him. She was simply a mother who had nothing left to give. He stepped forward slowly. "Let me see him." She gently placed the child in his arms. The boy was cold, very cold, heartbeat weak, pulse barely there. James quickly opened his medkit. Most of it was damaged, but he still had some tools, a scanner, a few injectors, bandages. "I'll do my best," he said, "but I need light." And silence. Varaya sat near the cave's entrance, eyes locked on every movement James made. She didn't blink. She didn't speak. Her hope rested in the hands of a human, a being her people once feared. Outside, the wind howled across the Deadlands. Strange creatures moved far in the distance, glowing softly under the twin moons. But in that quiet cave, two species sat together, one human, one alien, connected by fear, need, and the hope to save a small life. James didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight, he had one mission, and he would not fail. The cave was cold, but James's hands stayed warm from working fast. His fingers moved over the alien boy's body with great care. His human scanner beeped weakly. Most of its systems were damaged during the crash, but he could still see one thing clearly. The child's heart was almost not beating. James took a slow breath. "He's fading," he whispered. Virea, the alien mother, sat across from him, her silver skin glowing softly in the firelight. Her hands trembled. Her lips were cracked from thirst. Her eyes held a quiet storm: fear, hope, pain, and something deeper. She had already offered her body, her honor, even her soul, just to save this child, but now her face was tight with silence, like she had nothing left to offer but prayers. James turned to his medical bag. He pulled out a tiny injector, something meant for small wounds, not full treatments. It held a strong human drug. But would it work on alien blood? "I don't know if this will help," James said, not hiding the doubt in his voice. His biology is different. Human medicine might not. "Try," Virea said softly. "Please, just try." James pressed the injector gently against the boy's neck and clicked. The sound echoed too loud in the quiet cave. At first, nothing happened. Then the boy's small body jerked. His eyes twitched. His chest moved slightly. Virea gasped, rushing forward. Is he? James raised a hand. "Wait, not yet." He quickly wiped the boy's face, pressed his ear to the chest and listened. A heartbeat. Weak, but real. James sat back. He didn't smile. Not yet. This was not victory. It was only the beginning. "He needs warmth," James said. "His blood is too cold." Virea moved without thinking. She pulled off her long robe and laid it over the child. Then she crawled close and held her son tightly against her chest. James saw her bare shoulders and looked away. "I didn't mean." "I know," she whispered. "I'm not doing it for pleasure. I'm doing it because he's my life." There was a long silence between them. Then James asked, "What's his name?" Virea looked down at her son. "Talon," James nodded. "Talon, stay with us, kid." Suddenly, the fire cracked loudly, and both of them jumped. James looked at the cave entrance. Strange shadows moved outside. He stood, grabbed his scanner, and checked for life signs. "Something's out there," he said. Virea's body stiffened. "They followed me." James turned. "Who?" She looked at him with a sorrowful face. "My tribe. The ones who called my son cursed. They said he was born broken, weak. They feared he would bring shame, so they left us to die." James clenched his jaw. "Because he was sick?" "No," she whispered. "Because he was born from love." James didn't understand. Virea explained. She had once loved a male from another tribe, a forbidden love. When she became pregnant, her people rejected her. They saw Talon as a shameful mix, not pure, not strong. When he was born small and sickly, their anger grew. They said he's a sign of weakness, that I'm unfit to raise a warrior. "So they exiled you," James said. "They told me, let the desert take you both." James felt rage in his chest. Barbaric. He looked down at Talon again. The boy's breathing was slow but steady now. He was still fighting, even with a body that others had given up on. "You're stronger than they think, kid," James whispered. "And I won't let you go." He turned to Virea. "I'm staying until he's better. I'll do everything I can." Tears welled in her glowing eyes. She crawled toward him, not seductive, not begging, but grateful. She bowed low, her head touching the ground. "Thank you, human." James touched her shoulder lightly. "You don't have to kneel. Just stay strong for him." As night deepened, James added more fuel to the fire. Varaya curled around her son, and James watched over both of them, his metal rod in hand, eyes scanning the dark cave entrance. Outside, something growled in the distance. Inside, hope had taken its first breath. James hadn't slept. The fire in the cave was low now, only small flames flickering against the stone walls. Varaya had fallen into a light sleep, her body curled protectively around her child, Talon, but James sat upright, eyes wide open, scanning. A glowing alien tablet from his backpack. He had one goal: understand the child's biology fast. Because Talon's heartbeat had started. But it was growing weaker again. This isn't human, James muttered, staring at the scanned results. The boy's blood cells were shaped like diamonds. His heart had 2 chambers, not 4. And his organs were arranged differently. Most shocking of all, his body reacted negatively to normal oxygen levels. The planet's air was thinner, and James's own presence was making it harder for Talon to breathe. Damn it. He needed to build a filter, something to mimic the thin air the child needed. But all he had were broken ship parts and a melted respirator. James stood and stepped outside the cave. The air was colder now. The moons were high in the sky, casting blue and purple light over the rocky land. In the distance, the remains of his crashed ship still smoked. He hurried back there, carefully avoiding strange glowing insects that hissed as he passed. At the ship, he searched the wreckage, pulling out wires, glass tubing, and fragments of the oxygen chamber. As he worked, a distant growl echoed across the rocks. James froze. Not now. Suddenly, from behind a tall boulder, a small creature stepped out. Its eyes were too many. Its teeth were sharp and dripping with saliva. A scarn beast. James remembered the warning from the crash manual. They hunted by sound. The beast sniffed the air and moved toward him. James didn't have a weapon. Just a sharp metal shard in one hand and tubing in the other. He slowly backed away and stepped on dry bone. Crack! The beast's head shot toward him. It roared. James ran, back at the cave. Varaya jerked awake to the sound of thudding feet and a loud snarl. Stay inside, James shouted, sliding into the cave and throwing down his scavenged parts. The scarn beast reached the entrance seconds later, its long claws digging into the ground. James grabbed his metal rod and stood between it and the boy. But before it could leap, Varaya screamed. A high-pitched, powerful cry, filled with alien tones. The beast froze, then backed away, confused. It snarled once more, then turned and vanished into the dark. James stared, breathless. What was that? Varaya lowered her head, her voice shaking. It's an old song of fear, only our mothers know it. I never thought I'd use it again. James collapsed beside the fire, his hands trembling. Well, it worked. He looked at the pieces he brought. Now I just hope this does too. With tired eyes and a focused mind, James worked. He fused glass with melted metal. He used a pulse wire to control airflow. He adjusted the pressure using tubing and a valve from his water canister. Finally, he held up a small, glowing breathing cone. He placed it gently over Talon's mouth and nose. The boy's chest rose, then again, and then. His skin changed. From pale white to soft silver. His fingers twitched. His eyes slowly fluttered open. Talon? Varaya gasped, leaning closer. Mother? The boy whispered, voice dry and weak. Varaya cried out and hugged him tightly. James turned away, giving them space. His chest ached, not from pain, but from something else. This was why he became a doctor. Not medals, not payment, not even thanks. Just this moment. When life returned where death was expected, Varaya turned to him. You did what no one could. James nodded, wiping sweat from his face. He's not safe yet, but now he's fighting back. She looked down at the cone. What is it? Human tech, alien adjustment. Call it A breath maker. She smiled faintly. You're strange, human. James smirked. You're not exactly normal either. They both laughed softly. A moment of peace. But then, a sharp whistle echoed through the canyon outside. Virea stood quickly. No, not now. James looked confused. What is it? She turned toward the cave entrance, her eyes wide. My old tribe. They're close. And if they find us, her voice dropped, they'll take Talon, or kill him. James picked up his rod. Then we don't let them find us. Asterisk, the sharp whistle echoed again. Long, cold. A signal. James's heart pounded in his chest. Virea had frozen, standing at the cave entrance, her body stiff with fear. The alien child, Talon, stirred weakly under the blanket, unaware of the danger closing in. James whispered, Who are they? Virea didn't blink. The Blood Mist tribe, my old kin. They scent the air with red powder before hunting. That's how they mark death. And now they've marked us. James stepped forward, gripping his rod tightly. Why now? They left. You to die. They always return, she said softly. Not for mercy, but to erase shame. A sick child surviving in exile? That threatens their pride. They'll kill him, kill us both. And you. Outside, the wind shifted. Red dust drifted past the cave. James narrowed his eyes. We need to move, now. James lifted Talon gently, placing the child inside his thick coat, securing him with belts. Like a harness. Virea grabbed her robe and stuffed herbs into a pouch. Then, without a word, they ran into the cold night. The cave was behind them. The tribe was coming. The terrain was harsh, sharp rocks, deep cracks and glowing plants that hissed if touched. James followed Virea through narrow paths and across dry riverbeds. His body ached, but he didn't slow down. Talon's small breaths against his chest reminded him why. We'll hide in the spine rocks, Virea whispered. They fear that place. Why? They believe spirits live there. Spirits with claws. James smirked. Then it sounds perfect. But before they could reach it, a voice called out from behind. Virea. A male voice. Deep and mocking, Virea. Froze mid-step. James turned. A group of alien warriors stood on a cliff above them, their armor made of bone, their faces painted with blood symbols. At their front was a tall, broad-shouldered male with glowing red eyes. Tarek. Virea. Breathed. James could tell by her tone. This was personal. Tarek jumped down the rocks like a predator. His warriors followed. Still carrying your shame? He sneered. And now hiding behind a human? Pathetic. James stepped forward. She doesn't need to hide. You're the coward chasing a woman and a child, Tarek grinned. You think you're a hero, human. You're nothing here. You're prey. He snapped his fingers. Two warriors moved to flank them. James held up his rod. Come closer, and I break your jaw. The warriors laughed. But Virea didn't. She stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. Tarek, you were once my brother. That was before you betrayed our tribe, he hissed. Before you gave birth to that cursed child. Talon whimpered quietly in James's coat. James clenched his teeth. He's not cursed. He's alive. He's stronger than any of you. Tarek's eyes narrowed. Then let's see him survive this. Suddenly, Tarek lunged. James swung his rod, striking the warrior's side. But Tarek was fast. He grabbed James and threw him hard against a rock. Virea screamed. Talon rolled out of the coat, hitting the ground with a cry. Virea rushed to her child, shielding him with her body. Tarek stepped toward her. I will cleanse the tribe's name with their blood. James groaned, blood dripping from his lip. Then he spotted the pouch of herbs Virea had dropped. One plant in particular was glowing red. He remembered her words. This plant burns the eyes and blinds the enemy. James grabbed it. Just as Tarek raised his blade, James crushed the herb and flung the dust into his face. Tarek screamed, dropping his weapon. James tackled him to the ground. The warriors moved, but Varaya stood tall, holding a firestone. "Back off," she shouted, "or I burn us all." They stopped. Tarek lay on the ground, coughing and blinded. "You are not my brother anymore," Varaya said coldly. James pulled Varaya and Talon back. "Let's go," he said. "They won't follow now." As they ran, the tribe faded behind them, silent. The Blood Mist tribe had been defeated, not by weapons, but by a mother's will and a human's courage. Later, they reached the Spine Rocks. Sharp and twisted, the area felt haunted, but safe. James lay Talon down beside the fire he built. Varaya sat beside him. "You fought for him," she said quietly. "For us," James nodded, his knuckles bloody. "I said I'd protect him." She looked at him deeply. "You did more than that." Then, for the first time, she leaned close and gently placed her forehead against his, a gesture of bond, of trust, of something growing. The Spine Rocks were quiet. Sharp black stones twisted out of the ground like giant bones. The wind howled between them, making soft cries like whispers from ghosts. But inside the small stone hollow James had built, warmth glowed from the fire. Talon slept safely beside it, his chest now rising with steady breaths. The makeshift breathing cone pulsed with soft green light. The child was alive. James sat cross-legged near the fire, his hands covered in scratches and dried blood. Across from him sat Varaya, silent, calm, but her eyes full of thoughts. "Back on Earth," James said, "we tell stories about heroes who save lives." He poked the fire with a stick. "But no one ever talks about what happens after." Varaya tilted her head. "What happens?" He looked at her. "They usually leave. The world thanks them, and they disappear." Varaya's silver eyes shimmered. "Do you want to disappear?" James paused, then shook his head. "No, not this time." There was silence between them. Then Varaya reached into her robe and pulled out a small crystal carved like a tear. She held it toward him. "This is the bindstone," she said softly. "A sacred sign of my people. When a woman offers it to someone, it means she chooses them, fully." James looked confused. "You mean, like marriage?" Varaya nodded. "In body and bond. And in bloodline." James blinked. "Wait, are you?" "I offer myself," she said clearly. "Not for saving us, not as payment, but because I want to." James stood and backed away, his heart racing. "Varaya, this isn't right. Your people, your culture." "My people cast me out," she said, her voice suddenly sharp. "They called my son cursed. They left me in the desert. But you," her voice softened again, "you came from the sky and gave him breath. You looked at me like I was a person." "Not a problem." James looked down at the bindstone. "I'm just a doctor. I didn't come here to fall into someone's life." "Then why did you stay?" she asked quietly. He didn't have an answer. Not one he could explain. The fire popped. Talon stirred in his sleep and reached out in his dreams. Varaya went to him and held his small hand gently. James watched her, saw the mother, the strength, the woman beneath the alien skin. She wasn't offering her body out of desperation now. This time, it was choice. "I came to fix him," James said softly, walking toward her. "But somewhere along the way, you fixed me too." She looked up, surprised. He kneeled beside her and gently placed his hand over hers. "But I don't want to take advantage of you. Not now, not ever." Varaya smiled. "You aren't taking anything. You're becoming part of something." She leaned forward and gently placed the bindstone in his palm. "Accept it when you're ready," she said. "If not, no shame. You already gave me everything." Suddenly, the ground shook. A deep rumble vibrated through the stone walls. Talon woke with a cry. James stood quickly. "What now?" Varaya's face turned pale. They found us again. But not the Blood Mist tribe, something worse. In the distance, loud thuds echoed like machines. James ran up the ridge and looked out across the black desert. Glowing lights. Marching figures. Military MECHS. Human MECHS. Whispered in shock. Rescue team. Varaya stepped beside him, uncertain. James turned to her slowly. They're here for me. They'll take me and probably study you. Study Talon. Varaya backed away, her voice trembling. They'll separate us. James looked torn between two worlds, his duty as a human and his promise as a man. He looked down at the bindstone in his hand, then at the boy behind him, then at Varaya. I have to make a choice. Asterisk, the stars above flickered like cold eyes. James stood on the ridge, staring at the distant glow of human rescue mechs marching through the night. Their legs pounded the ground with metallic rhythm. Their searchlights cut across the black desert like swords. Behind him, Varaya held Talon close. You said they're your people, she whispered. Will they help us? James didn't answer. Right away. His throat was tight. They'll help me, he finally said. But not you, not him. They'll ask questions, take blood. Maybe even separate us for study. That's what they do with unknowns. Varaya's eyes shimmered with worry. And if I say no? He asked himself quietly. If I choose to stay? But before an answer could come, new sound rose from the east. Not machines, drums. Low, heavy, alive. Varaya's head snapped toward the sound. No, it can't be him. Not again. James turned. Who? From the shadows between the rocks stepped a figure, broad-shouldered, covered in bone armor. Eyes glowing like fire. Tarek, the warrior she had once called brother. Now he returned scarred, furious. And not alone. Around him stood a new group. Not the Blood Mist tribe. These were outcasts. Banished warriors, rogues, mercenaries. All of them following the one who had sworn revenge. Tarek smiled with venom. Did you think I'd crawl back into the dark, sister? James stepped in front of Varaya. She's not your sister anymore. Tarek's voice was low and cruel. You're right. She's something worse now. A traitor. A lover of humans. And her child half weak, half wrong. Varaya stood tall. You lost, Tarek. You were beaten. He sneered. But I wasn't finished. Then he raised something in his hand. A dark black device. The mechs out there? Tarek said. I called them. James froze. You, what? I knew a human crashed. I saw your fire. So I offered them coordinates. I told them I captured a human and his alien captives. In exchange, they'll take me with them, off this planet. Varaya's voice trembled. You would sell your own blood? Tarek stepped closer. Blood means nothing in the Deadlands. Power does. James's mind raced. He had no weapons. No backup, only a rod, a half-healed child. And a mother willing to risk everything. He glanced at the bindstone in his pocket. A bond. Sacred and unbreakable if accepted. He looked at Varaya. Then at Talon. He had to decide now. James pulled out the bindstone. I accept it, he said. Clearly, Varaya gasped softly. Tarek single quotes. S eyes went wide with rage. You dare! James dropped the bindstone into the fire. A bright blue flame erupted. A wind burst around them. And a sound like a song from another world echoed between the rocks. Varaya stood beside James and took his hand. Now, she said, we are one. Tarek screamed, kill them. His warriors charged forward. James held his rod high, but just before the first blow, a massive spotlight blasted down from the sky. The rescue mechs had arrived, their cannons powered up with loud whines. A voice boomed, step back from the human, drop your weapons. Tarek turned in shock. James shouted, I'm a crash survivor, Dr. James Miller. The others are with me. They're under my protection. The mech's paws. Tarek snarled. You lie. She's a savage. Her child is cursed. One of the mechs scanned James's vitals. Identity confirmed. Dr. Miller, Priority Alpha. Then the mech turned toward Tarek. Unauthorized contact. Threat level high. A pulse blast fired. Tarek was thrown across the rocks, unconscious. His warriors fled. The dust settled. James stood, shaking, holding Varea's hand tightly. The lead mech stepped closer. Doctor, are you injured? James didn't reply. He looked down at Talon, who smiled weakly. Then up at Varea, who had tears in her eyes. He looked back at the mech and said, They're coming with me. The rising sun on Corellos painted the sky in violet and gold. The battle was over. The machines had powered down. The dust had settled. James stood near the edge of the cliff, wind brushing his hair as he looked out across the red desert. Behind him, the massive human rescue mech stood idle, its searchlights dimmed. Its pilot waited for orders, but James hadn't spoken yet. Varea sat on a warm rock beside the fire, cradling her son Talon. His skin glowed with healthy color now. The breathing cone still rested on his face, but he was stronger. His little fingers curled around hers, and he was smiling. You sure about this, Doctor? The mech pilot called. James didn't turn. You mean bringing them with me? The voice replied, cautious. We weren't sent to retrieve aliens. Only you, and technically, what you're doing is against Earth code. James smiled slightly. Then change the code. He walked back toward Varea. She stood slowly as he approached. There was something uncertain in her eyes. Not fear, but doubt. You could leave, she said quietly. Now that you're safe. Now that your people are here. James looked at her for a long moment. I could, he said. But then I'd be leaving behind something I didn't know I needed. She blinked. What? A reason to stay. He knelt beside Talon and gently touched the boy's hair. He's got a strong heart. I can feel it. But more than that. He looked up at her. He deserves a chance to live, to grow, to be more than a name whispered in the shadows. Varea's voice was soft. And me? James stood. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the now cooled bindstone. It shimmered with a faint blue hue, marked forever by the fire. You offered this to me with your heart, he said. Now, I offer mine. He placed the stone into her hand. I don't care what Earth says. You're not just an alien. You're mine, my family. She looked at the stone, trembling, then stepped forward and rested her forehead against his, just like before. But this time, Talon reached up and touched both of their arms. A bond of 3. A circle complete. Later, as the sun rose higher, the pilot approached. I filed the report, he said. You're listed as returning with foreign dependents. There will be questions, probably even tests. James nodded. Let them ask, I'll have answers. And the boy? James looked at Talon, now curled asleep against his mother. Put this in your report. The boy survived what no one else could. That makes him human enough for me. The mech lowered its boarding ramp. James turned to Varea. You ready? She looked up at the massive machine. Your world, it scares me. He smiled gently. Mine scared me too, until I met you. She took his hand. Then let's face it together. They climbed the ramp, one step at a time, carrying no weapons, just hope and each other. As the doors closed, a new message was logged into Earth Command. Dr. James Miller. Status, rescued. Mission outcome, successful. Addendum, returned not alone. Returned with purpose. In the years to come, many would speak of the human who chose love over law, healing over harm, and family over fear. And in one small home on a green colony world, a boy with alien eyes and a human heart would grow up strong, laughing often, always holding 2 hands, one of the mother who gave them life, and one of the man who gave him a future.